Good afternoon. This is Tom Fountain. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Neuron, and I'm happy to welcome you to our conversation about powering digital innovation. There's nothing more urgent among companies today than to improve their competitiveness, and a critical component of that is the speed with which they can innovate. That innovation could take multiple forms, but is urgently required to deal with the vast majority of change and new ideas that are flowing through a business or are forced upon a business from non-traditional competitors, regulators, and others. Today we'll talk about innovation in a couple of different perspectives, but we'll also discuss specifically how Neuron will help you address those ambitions and to deal with the various complexities that you may be faced from a technical point of view, a process point of view, or even a people point of view, all to help you respond more quickly with a high degree of effectiveness. So let's talk a bit about business innovation. One of my favorite recollections is from the 1990s, where Jim Collins described the genius of the and, where you really can't optimize just in one particular dimension, but you really have to establish the right balance. The challenge today is this natural tension and need for balance between what IT is all about and what the business is all about. And I'm a very big advocate of a very close linkage between these two critical organizations to help modern businesses take advantage of new technology and enable the types of change that the business is looking for. On the IT side, the desire, of course, is for control and centralization for at least the appropriate elements of the business operations: security, controls, efficiency, utilization. The first people to be blamed when there's a leakage of sensitive information is the IT organization. So that's a very tough role, and they need to have the right controls and the right disciplines to ensure that as they face these disrupting factors like hackers, like mergers and acquisitions, things that can very much upset the natural flow, that they're in a position to deal with those disruptors at the same time serving the business. Now, on the other side of the ledger is you have a business who's trying to compete against new business models, against new non-traditional competitors, and always looking for ways to grow the business, whether it's with partners or new channels, even new operating models. Fortunately, there's a great collection of new technology that can drive innovation. Things like social and mobile and analytics, cloud-based computing, Internet of Things, all wonderful technologies that, if deployed correctly, can make a significant difference in terms of speeding up how fast a business can respond to the changes that can make or break their ultimate success. So our focus is around innovation, and we really look at it in a life cycle fashion, from conceiving to designing, from deploying and optimizing, and critically all with the speed and agility and the low cost position to allow you to try to, frankly, fail, but ultimately to succeed and establish that business IT balance as you go into the market and try to win, frankly, a very competitive game. Now, as we talk about Neuron specifically, when the company was founded about 6 years ago, it was founded by fundamentally business people who understood the need for speed and agility and responsiveness. And so the direct attack was about how do we sidestep, where we can, the traditional centralize everything model depicted here on the left side. In the old days, quote unquote, you had to centralize all of the components of value before you could create a particular solution. Most classically, analytics and data warehousing, and even now big data, says bring it all together, then I'll create some value. Now, for certain types of problems, that is absolutely required, particularly when you're trying to do discovery type of analytics, because you need to operate on very large volumes of data. But for many types of problems, you can think of creating value in a much more distributed fashion. On the right side of the page is how the Neuron platform has been architected to leverage the assets that you have across your full ecosystem. Those could be inside your four walls or outside. Those could be applications, databases, files, data services, and so forth. The goal being to very lightly interact in a very targeted way and then sequence value creation across those disparate assets, getting only what you need exactly when you need it to address a particular business requirement. In a way, it harkens to the fairly recent conversations around event-driven businesses and highly responsive types of business models. And in fact, as we depict here across the bottom, we've gone through several waves of innovation and technology investments over the last number of years. The transactional wave about ERPs was to rationalize all of the disparate systems that had been put in over time and create more integration and linkage in terms of internal business operations. Then people moved on to a much more strong push on analytics and said, can we be smarter? Can we figure out what's really going on across the business by looking at an aggregated set of information and deriving new insight from that collection of information or data? The third wave that we see formulating and beginning to come to fruition is around the orchestration of actually value creation. And it says we need those transactional systems to execute business. We need the big data and analytics to be smart about what to do, but we actually have to orchestrate between and among those systems as well as our planning systems and our supplier relationship systems and so forth to allow you to actually orchestrate the way that you want business conducted. It's very much that event-driven business that many organizations speak of, the sense and respond style of business model. But those types of strategies can be very challenging if you have to centralize before you can create value. And with the Neuron platform, we believe that much of that activity can be pushed to the edge with the appropriate cross-platform orchestration being done in a highly governed way, as would be required by IT, but in a very dynamic, flexible, and agile way in support of the business. Let's walk through a couple of elements of the Neuron platform itself and how we directly support this ambition. The first key component is around configurable services. The Neuron platform allows you to select, configure, and connect these building blocks. We happen to call them neurons. These are targeted services that are visually configurable, fully interoperable with one another, and allow you to create specific sequences of value-added work between and among that very diverse set of applications, files, databases, web services, websites that you either have or can reach, or frankly someday may acquire. We need the ability to interact with those, we need the ability to do analysis, and we need the ability to deliver results, all in a very flexible way and in a very agile way. The goal from the ground up with Neuron was to allow a business subject matter expert or an IT business analyst to be able to directly participate in creating value. And that's a key tenet to accelerating overall time to value. The next component is the actual design at a very logical level of the business processes that you need to bring to life. Here we've got a picture of our design studio, which is a web application where you select and configure and connect these various neurons or services together to create a specific workflow. This is a straight web application with nothing more than a browser on your desktop. You can participate in building networks or subnetworks, perhaps as a designer, perhaps only consuming. We have permissioning levels and all levels of security and authorizations as necessary so that administrators can very specifically tune who has access to what resources, who can execute what work, who can make changes to those elements. The key is that it's a very rapid both design and test, deploy and run environment so that from a single screen you can manage the entire life cycle of your particular solution and constantly and in a very innovative way continuously improve the work that is performed, whether it's by changing an individual type of neuron, reconfiguring a specific neuron, or even build extensions, meaning other paths for execution that may be necessary as you learn more about your business problem. The key is time to value and agility. so that you can very quickly respond to the opportunities and changes that are forced upon you or that you seek and can see yourself. From a physical deployment point of view, Neuron gives you a significant number of options about how you want to configure and deploy the infrastructure that's required to run this particular platform. I've got a specific example here where we have deployed 3 cortices. A cortex is our container. We follow a microservices and container style of architecture where we have built a specific container called the cortex that provides the execution context, manages the physical resources that are required for the individual neurons to perform their configured instructions. In that network design, as you configure and connect neurons, you also can assign to which cortex they will be executed. That gives you the flexibility to move laterally in this case and reassign individual neurons to different cortices with simply 2 clicks. So as you execute this solution and learn, you can very easily migrate elements between and among the different installed infrastructures that you have and allow you to optimize the overall performance. You also get additional benefits like being able to localize processing to deal with data privacy restrictions. And with this type of distributed execution model, you can easily horizontally scale by installing additional cortices. You can vertically scale any one or all of the individual cortices. And we even have options for dynamic scaling, which I'll talk about a bit further on, where you can deal with the variation of workloads over time, take advantage of additional capacity that you may have available or can tap into, and use it on a pay-per-use basis and quickly return it when you've caught up to your processing loads. The key in this platform is that we're using all standards-based interactions to interact in a very targeted way with those diverse set of assets that you have access to. Again, databases, files, message queues, and the like, but we have a full library of neurons that know how to interact with and get value from that diverse set of resources within your broader environment. Now, one of the key challenges for Neuron is to continually innovate and expand the reach of our specific platform to work with the very wide range of platforms, databases, and such that you may have in your environment. This screen indicates a number of enhancements that we've made in the platform very recently that I'll briefly walk through to give you a sense of the type of ongoing enhancements and innovations that we bring to the platform to help you maintain that very high degree of time to value and the agility that is required as part of that. First quick example is having built pre-built some integrations to industry-leading platforms like SharePoint and Exchange. More and more unstructured information is required for key business processes, so we want to make sure that as those types of assets are being tapped into, you have the same degree of productivity that you would have with other types of resources in your environment. So these pre-built integrations make it very easy to configure and interact with those Microsoft platforms in particular that will allow you to interact and extract the specific elements that you need and be able to bring those into Neuron for further processing. Our second recent innovation has to do with robotic scripting. We have, since the ground up, been accessing back-end systems like databases, using APIs to call applications, but there are certainly a class of websites where neither of those options are available. The so-called presentation layer integration style, or robotics, has become a very popular category in and of itself. Our first generation capability allows you to construct the appropriate scripting and in the mix of your standard neuron network be able to interact with a targeted website, execute that script, and process as necessary through multiple screens of a website, and then extract or scrape the appropriate targeted information and bring that back into Neuron so that further downstream those elements can be used to do processing or decision making or whatever type of logic you have implemented. That robotic scripting will continue to expand in future generations of our roadmap to deal with an ever wider range of source types. But we think this is a great complement to the logic layer integration that we've been supporting for years, but give our customers another avenue with which to bring targeted information into our networks. The third area, also dealing with, in many cases, semi-structured data, is we've enhanced a number of our file parsing capabilities to help people take advantage, again, of additional sources of information, this time in various file formats that are valuable sources of information for the business processing that we've been talking about. We've added a number of file format types, improved the ease of creating the processing, or I should say parsing templates. Again, to maintain high speed and a high degree of agility, putting these tools in the hands of designers will allow them to take full advantage of those resources that exist in their environment, bring those into Neuron on a very targeted select basis, and have those be a part of this business workflow. There's two other enhancements that I'm also going to discuss briefly that have to do more with the internals of the platform. First, here on the bottom left, is around our dynamic scaling capabilities. On that prior page where we had multiple cortices deployed physically in your environment, you can actually cluster those cortices. That gives you a high availability play because we will dynamically sense if a node is lost for some reason. We will reform that cluster automatically, and we will re-queue work to ensure that nothing is lost during that particular node outage. We've added additional capabilities to take advantage of the types of cloud-based resources that you may have access to or even have set up internally in your environment. That gives you the flexibility to configure a portion of this cluster with a more static set of resources, let's say that will handle the steady state level of work, but take advantage on an on-demand basis of some capacity that may be needed to support a spike in workload. Without too much detail, effectively what's happening is as you configure this cluster, you can assign specific neuron networks, assign those to one or more specific nodes that are workers within that cluster. You can even assign priority ranges to help you create a fast lane or a slow lane for different types of work. And as work arrives, our dispatching algorithms will select the appropriate and authorized node to receive that unit of work. And as workload escalates, we will dynamically work with, for example, in AWS, we will bring up an additional instance or two or more, add those into the cluster dynamically, and the dispatcher will begin to spread work across all of those nodes dynamically. As the workload returns to normal levels, the dispatcher will sense that and then return or give back those dynamic nodes back to their source. Often that's a pay-per-use, and certainly you don't want to consume the resource if you're not needing it. Here in the bottom right, just briefly, we've also made enhancements to our dashboarding tool. This is our second of 3 web applications and allows you to very quickly construct these dashboards that will show the results of your processing. We've a set of widgets that are fully configurable. You can set up obviously colors and thresholds and other types of components within each of these different widget types. Very importantly, you can also activate neuron networks from various different types of widgets. That allows humans to participate in execution by perhaps evaluating the results that are presented in the various charts, graphs, and tables, and then to take an action with a single click that can launch a secondary network. So in a particular example where we're helping anti-money laundering investigators perform their analyses, we can orchestrate value creation through a variety of dashboards that show all of the processing results of the information needed for the investigator. And then with one click, they can launch actions such as escalate a case, close a case, or forward it to someone else for further consideration. Strictly speaking, our dashboarding tool is optional. Many companies have already invested in query and reporting tools or other presentation layers. In that case, you can think of Neuron as a services layer because all of our networks can be accessed and launched in multiple ways, including a web services type interface, so that you could, in an event-driven way, launch a neuron network from various platforms in your environment, and we'll go and execute the appropriate sets of work that we're configured to do, and then using one or more of those output neuron types, we'll deliver those results to the destination that best fits your operational needs. Over the course of the last 2 years, we've had some incredible results in a pretty wide range of use cases. I've got a few just to help bring these key concepts back together. In terms of time to market, we've executed with a very large financial services organization where they are working on deploying a transaction monitoring capability. That is a very large-scale, complex undertaking, primarily because of the information integration challenges, all before you can begin to run these complex scenarios. Using Neuron, we've built out via rapid prototyping and then through continuous improvement over 80 different scenarios and deployed those in less than 10 months. Those are targeting specific data elements from very disparate sources, bringing those together, applying analytics, and delivering that value-added result set to a destination of choice, well ahead of the traditional timeline that's required to implement that type of complexity. Another great example is working with a telco where within a single day, we completed an entire proof of concept from installation through presenting dashboards to the CIO. That was done by creating networks, dashboards, and continuously improving over the course of that same first day the various ways that we source and aggregate targeted information from disparate internal and external sources like warehouses and distributorships, logistics companies, and so forth. Because the network runs on an event-driven basis, we can get very fresh information directly from the source and deliver that immediately to our dashboards so that the consumer can see very current, relevant information that's been generated and done in a very fast, complete fashion. Other examples include significant productivity impacts. We helped a specialty investigations firm who was doing what's called a look-back project. We deployed within 4 weeks an AML investigation capability where they have been hired by a regulator to evaluate the strength of the controls program that a particular bank had in place. They had over 200,000 cases that needed to be investigated. We improved their productivity by 50%, all within those same 4 weeks, that allowed them to complete their project in literally half the time and half of the investigators that were initially planned to be required. There's a variety of other use cases as well, and I welcome you to our website where we have a number of case studies and further reference materials at your disposal. And of course, we'd be happy to discuss these results and others with you. At the end of the day, if we bring all of these elements back together, it's all about innovation. It's all about taking the best of what your environment or your ecosystem has to offer in a very targeted way, in a very productive way, in a very agile and flexible way. Our goal is to enable this hybrid deployment concept of mixing and matching at will between what you have or what you may have access to allow you to mix both legacy applications, other systems, and so forth with these newer innovations and bring both the IT and the business organizations much closer together and shorten that cycle time and that feedback loop and allow subject matter expertise to be directly infused into the business. The continuous innovation component is about rapidly adapting to change. That could be infrastructure change, requirements change, sources change, platforms change. And because we have crafted this network with discrete neurons, you can implement the corrective action or deal with those changes on a very targeted, focused basis. Importantly, in a neuron network, the downstream neurons really have no idea how an upstream neuron did its job. It simply knows what the result set is that's arriving for it to process. That isolation allows you to very discreetly make those targeted corrections or improvements without disrupting any or very little of the entire rest of that solution. And at the end of the day, it's all about establishing that win-win relationship. We hear of too many organizations where IT and the business are in a contentious relationship, each because they have their own passions about those two ends of the continuum, control, protection, efficiency, and such, versus speed, innovation, flexibility on the business end. The time has come to put those two together, and we offer Neuron as a great way to leverage those sets of capabilities we bring to help you establish that balance. To wrap it up, we have a number of recommended resources. These are on our website and are available for you to think about how the market is thinking about innovation. I point you to a set of Gartner references. The leading thinkers are working very hard to help guide users and the community around how to think about how to take those initial steps in the innovation direction that allow you to participate, not be fearful of the new technologies, but at the same time respect the controls that are needed. We've got a number of resources about the Neuron platform, which we've touched on a bit today as well, both from an architecture and technology point of view. This microservices and containers aspect we go into a bit of detail about. And there's certainly been some recent points of view in the news where we've contributed some of our thought leadership that give you a very good perspective about how we think about using Neuron and how we can leverage our technology footprint into helping you solve those specific business problems. And finally, just to indicate that we've had significant recognition over the last couple of years from leading organizations such as media, market analysts, and so forth. We've had a very robust degree of business success, and we continue to see a exponential growth in our business. And we would love to talk to individuals either about business or about doing business together, but certainly from just learning more about your perspective on innovation and how you might have some great ideas for us about how we can better transform the way that we contribute to helping businesses be more competitive. Thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I welcome you to visit us at the website, and you can request a discussion or any number of other ways that we can help you out. Thank you very much. Have a good day.